A question we get a lot from landlords is, what do I do when tenants stop paying rent? It's a top concern for people considering real estate investing, and a very real issue for some landlords. While it's a common source of angst, here's the reality. When you have good systems in place for tenant screening and a detailed state-specific lease, you drastically reduce the risk of tenants not paying rent. In our experience, when landlords keep their property in good condition, screen tenants and only rent to qualified applicants, communicate well with tenants, and have clear policies for late rent, they rarely have to deal with tenants falling behind on rent. That said, sometimes it happens, and landlords need to know what to do when it does. With that in mind, here's a step-by-step guide for dealing with tenants who fall behind on rent. First, review your lease agreement. It should specify the day rent is due each month and may provide a grace period for paying rent. Some states require grace periods and others don't. Your first step should be checking the lease to confirm that rent is late. Next, remind the tenant that the rent is late. Ideally, you use a rent payment system that sends reminders when rent is due and past due. That said, sometimes a tenant just forgets to pay rent. Start with a friendly reminder to your tenant that rent is late. This is just an informal call or a text. More often than you might think, this takes care of the issue. If there's a bigger issue, you want to talk with the tenant about coming up with a plan to get them back on track. It's important to strike the right tone in this conversation. You want to be firm and professional, but also human. Life happens, and everyone has seasons where they get behind. If the tenant is communicating with you, try to work with them to create a plan to get them back on track. That said, if the tenant isn't communicating with you or isn't willing to work with you, you need to send an official notice to pay or quit. The notice gives the tenant a set number of days to either get current on rent or vacate the property. The period varies from state to state. You can customize your state's notice to pay or quit at ezLandlordForms.com. Don't hesitate on this step. It's a good way to figure out whether a tenant plans to stay or go. If the tenant doesn't pay within the period, you have two options. Reach out to the tenant one last time to offer a cash for keys agreement, or begin the eviction process. In a cash for keys agreement, the tenant agrees to vacate the property in return for a one-time cash payment. While this might sound counterintuitive, it's cheaper and faster than an eviction, and a good last attempt to negotiate with tenants. If that doesn't work, it's time to start the eviction process. Our advice? Hire an attorney to handle this. The eviction process is time-consuming and complex, and it's really important to do things right. A local attorney who specializes in evictions will ensure everything is done correctly. Plus, it means you don't have to worry about it. Hopefully, you won't ever need them, but those are the steps to follow when tenants are behind on rent. Subscribe for more videos like this and check the description for links to the forms we mentioned in the video. Thanks for watching and happy landlording!